Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show.
You're listening to The Tom Daniel Show, and I'm your host, Tom Daniel. Why did the old radio announcer get kicked out of the bar? Well, because every time he walked in, he would say, "We interrupt this program." Today, I want to take a look at the old dusty dials and glowing tubes of early Southern radio. Now, this episode is all about the forgotten stations, the ones that didn't just play music, but changed culture, changed identity, and race relations in the American South and beyond. From high-powered towers in Nashville to the shady border blasters out of Mexico, from the cries of the Delta to the choirs of Sunday morning, these stations gave voice to a people, a culture, a sound, and a spirit. Specifically, I'd like to focus on 5 stations in particular, so let's tune in. In 1925, a quiet revolution began in a Nashville insurance office. The National Life and Accident Insurance Company decided to start their own radio station just to promote their business. And they named it WSM, which stood for We Shield Millions. Now, what started as a corporate promo turned into the heartbeat of American country music. The inside joke at the station was that WSM actually stood for We Sing Mighty. Just months after launching WSM, they began broadcasting a barn dance hosted by announcer George D. Hay. But when he heard the down-home sounds of a fiddler named Uncle Jimmy Thompson, he knew something special was happening. Now, the radio program that aired right before his was called The Grand Opera. Therefore, with tongue-in-cheek, he just renamed his own show The Grand Ole Opry. Now, what followed was a sonic gold rush. String bands, harmonica players, old-time singers, Appalachian storytellers, they all streamed into Nashville. Artists like Roy Acuff, Minnie Pearl, Ernest Tubb, and later Hank Williams all became household names through the Opry's weekly broadcast. And then came DeFord Bailey. He was a black harmonica wizard from Smith County, Tennessee. In the 1930s, he became the first African-American performer on the Opry, mesmerizing listeners with renditions like Fox Chase on the harmonica. His presence challenged the racial norms of the South, even if the station, sadly, would later remove him under complex and painful circumstances. WSM's 50,000-watt signal could be heard in 30 states and eventually worldwide via shortwave. It created a new musical identity, country, born from folk, blues, gospel, and mountain ballads. Now, for millions of Americans, white, black, rich, poor, urban, rural, WSM was the sound of home. And now let's head west to WDIA in Memphis, a station that did something no one else had dared to do, programmed specifically for a black audience. Now, founded in 1947 by white owners John Pepper and Bert Ferguson, WDIA was not an instant success. Since it was their second radio station, they named it We Did It Again, or WDIA. Their original format was all mainstream, middle-of-the-road pop and light entertainment, and it barely made a dent in the ratings. Now, that all changed when they hired Nat D. Williams. He was a history teacher and columnist for the black newspaper, The Memphis World. And when he took to the microphone with a blend of jive talk, local commentary, and rhythm and blues, the airwaves caught fire. His show, called Tan Town Jubilee, connected with black listeners like nothing before it. He called it good music for good people. And suddenly, advertisers realized that was a powerful, untapped market. Soon, WDIA became the first station in the country to feature all-black on-air talent and program for a black audience 24 hours a day. The playlist expanded to include gospel choirs, gut bucket blues, and the earliest stirrings of soul music. A young B.B. King even got his start there, spinning records and doing radio spots as the Beale Street Blues Boy. Now, beyond music, WDIA offered news, public service announcements, funeral notices, and educational programming, all geared toward black communities who'd long been ignored by mainstream media. Its signal reached deep into the Delta and up through the Midwest, giving African Americans a sense of cultural ownership and pride in the airwaves. In the days before civil rights legislation, WDIA gave its listeners a voice and a vision of freedom. All right, now things get wild. Let's cross the border down into Villa Acuña, Mexico, where in the 1930s and 40s, American entrepreneur Dr. John R. Brinkley set up a radio station that practically melted the airwaves. His station, XERA, operated with a whopping 1 million watts of power, far more than was legal in the U.S. It was so powerful, legend says you could hear it through barbed wire fences or even the fillings in your teeth. But Brinkley wasn't just pushing power. He was pushing everything. Miracle cures, goat gland transplants, baby chicks by mail, even phony medical degrees. Yet tucked in between the quackery was music. And that's what stuck. XERA became an unlikely platform for artists who couldn't get airtime in more respectable U.S. markets. Traveling quartets, gospel ensembles, and some brand new recording stars. The Carter Family and Jimmy Rogers were recorded in Bristol, Tennessee in 1927 by Ralph Peer, and those sessions were pressed into records. But who played those records on the radio? XERA, of course. That's how they were launched into the homes of millions of Americans. Now, because Brinkley needed content to fill hours of airtime, he gave slots to anyone who could play or draw a crowd. Often, these were rural musicians, poor, southern, and raw, who brought mountain songs, spirituals, and early honky-tonk to an international audience. These border stations, known collectively as border blasters, operated just outside U.S. regulation, yet they shaped the tastes of millions of Americans. They were outlaw, yes, but they were also equal opportunity outlaws, welcoming voices and sounds that the FCC wouldn't touch. Without XERA and its kind, we might never have heard the Carter family singing "Keep on the Sunny Side" under a Mexican sky. You're listening to The Tom Daniels Show. We'll be right back.
What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show.
Welcome back to the Tom Daniels Show. I should have known Mary Mac would be this brilliant. Mary Mac is the world's most perfect band. And we've been talking about old-time Southern radio, and I've got a question. Why did the jazz band refuse to play on the radio? Well, because they didn't want to ruin their reputation and have someone actually hear them. Okay, that's more than more of a jazz joke than a radio joke, but Okay, now, headed back to Nashville, another station was shaking things up, but only after dark. WLAC, a CBS affiliate station, aired network news and talk shows by day. But once the sun went down, their signal carried something much more radical. Black music played by white DJs. DJs like John Richburg, better known as John R., along with Gene Nobles and Hoss Allen, embraced rhythm and blues long before it became safe. They spoke in jive slang, they mimicked black vernacular, sometimes controversially, and played records by Little Walter, Big Mama Thornton, Bo Diddley, and more. It was wild, it was raw, and it was real. especially to the southern white teenagers and northern black night shift workers who made up its sprawling, multiracial audience. WLAC helped R&B cross over, laying the groundwork for rock and roll. Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, they were all listening to that station. So were Motown founders like Berry Gordy. The DJs blatantly took payola. They ran wild ads for mail-order goods and stirred the pot of race and class. But they also championed music that nobody else would touch at that time. And in doing so, they helped launch a movement. By the time mainstream radio caught up, WLAC had already seeded a musical revolution. Now, if the Grand Ole Opry was the front porch of country music, stately, tradition-bound, and a little uptight, then the Louisiana Hayride was the back porch, wild, loud, open to anybody with a guitar and a dream, and it was broadcast out of KWKH in Shreveport, Louisiana. The Hayride started in 1948 and quickly earned a nickname, the Cradle of the Stars. KWKH had been on the air since the 1920s, founded by old man and self-styled eccentric W.K. Henderson, who used the station to rail against everything from big government to chain stores. But by the late 1940s, the station had refocused, and that's when things got exciting. They launched the Louisiana Hayride as a live Saturday night show, broadcast from the Municipal Auditorium and beamed across a multi-state region. It wasn't as polished as the Opry, but it had energy, it had risk, and it had hunger. Unlike the Opry, the Louisiana Hayride welcomed newcomers, even if they weren't polished or well-connected. And that meant it became a proving ground for some of the biggest names in American music. Let's start with a kid named Hank. In 1948, Hank Williams stepped onto the Hayride stage not long after the Opry had dismissed him for drinking and being unreliable. At KWKH, they didn't care. They just knew that Hank could sing the pain out of a song like nobody else. He performed Lovesick Blues, and the crowd went wild. The Hayride embraced Hank Williams and gave him back his audience. And then came a shy young truck driver from Tupelo named Elvis. Elvis auditioned for the Hayride in 1954. Now, the Opry had already turned him down flat, said he'd never make it. But at KWKH, producer Horace Logan heard something in that hip-shaking gospel boy. Elvis debuted October 16, 1954, singing That's All Right, Mama. Now, at first, the crowd did not know what to make of him until he started moving. That's when the girls screamed, the boys started hollering, and Southern radio would never be the same again. Elvis played the Hayride almost every Saturday for the next year and a half. It was the launch pad that took him to national fame. But the Hayride wasn't just Hank and Elvis. It featured Johnny Cash, Kitty Wells, George Jones, Slim Whitman, and a teenage Wanda Jackson, all before they were stars. It was also integrated in its own way. Now, although the official lineup was largely white, black artists and musicians played in the bands. And KWKH's reach, stretching from Texas to the Carolinas, brought R&B and gospel influences to audience who might never have tuned into WDIA or WLAC. The Hayride's success came from its rough edges. It welcomed originals, singers with weird voices and strange phrasing and wild energy. Now, if the Opry was country music's cathedral, Hayride was the tent revival. Even the closing line became famous. When Elvis left to sign with RCA and hit the national stage, the Hayride announcer Horace Logan famously told the crowd, "Elvis has left the building." Now, that wasn't just a line. That was the sound of a new America walking out the back door of a Southern radio station and into history. These stations didn't just change music, they changed people. They cracked open the Southern soul and let it pour out into the world. The pain, the joy, the twang, the shout, the groove. They gave names and sounds to movements that had long gone unrecorded, literally and figuratively. They brought down walls between hillbillies and bluesmen, between preacher and picker, between sharecropper and city slicker. And maybe most importantly, they democratized the music. Now, no matter how poor you were or how far from the city, if you had a tin roof and a radio, you could tap into the living, breathing world of music. Thank you for tuning in to the Tom Daniels Show. Hey, keep that dial turned low and warm, my babies. Keep listening. Keep learning.
Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening and keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. Take a break from your usual routine and tune in to the Tom Daniels Show. You'll discover the world of melodies and stories that you might not know. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show.